we have to start to figure out what is it that has made your body not feel safe. And in my clinical practice, a lot of what I actually do is help people navigate their other practitioners, right? So in the medical system, this is what you need to be asking for, talking about, conversations to have with your doctor. If you have, a naturopathic, alternative, functional, whatever practitioner you're working with, I'm often just facilitating those conversations.
Welcome to the Clear Skin Chronicles, the podcast that takes you on a journey to uncover the secrets of achieving glowing, acne-free skin. We believe that knowledge is power, and by understanding the root causes of your acne, we can create a solid foundation for long-lasting clear skin. I'm Katie Stewart, registered holistic nutritionist and founder of the Clear Skin Solution, where we help women just like you get to the root cause of their acne.
And I'm Cris Brown, registered holistic nutritionist and program director in the Clear Skin Solution. Through functional testing, we pinpoint where the body system imbalances lie so we can dive deep into your acne clearing journey.
We work virtually with clients to clear up their skin from the inside out and have helped thousands of women worldwide regain their confidence. Well, we have an exciting topic today. I think this is one of Chris's most loved topics, all things histamine. So we had to bring in an incredible expert in the world of histamine. I should say one of the incredible experts in the world of histamine, because Tracey, you are part of a 2-woman team along with your other half is Luca Simmons. You're here representing the two of you today. And the reason I wanted one of you to come on the podcast was because with acne, as I'm sure you can attest, is we see histamine intolerances left, right, and center. And even I myself, having dealt with Epstein-Barr virus and having a histamine component, I went and did a histamine protocol, and it's not an easy protocol to do. And I was like, I need some type of additional support. So I found your cookbook probably about a year ago now, and I was obsessed with it. All of the recipes were incredible. You had this amazing cassava flatbread that I still make to this day, even though I'm not doing a histamine protocol. So I'm so happy to be here. And if anyone's listening, please go and grab Tracey and Luca's wonderful book, Histamine Haven, some incredible recipes. And, the goal of this book really is to help resolve chronic health issues when there's no resolution in sight, which, you're preaching to the choir here, Tracey, because this is what we do. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And as you said, I'm representing Histamine Haven. I'm one half of our team. We like to call ourselves the mavens of Histamine
Oh,
Haven.
I love it.
But yeah, passionate about this topic, obviously. So I'm always excited to be able to add to people's knowledge about what's going on in their bodies.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And that's really what we're all here to do, is empower people with the knowledge of what's happening and that the fact that they can do something. So I'm going to let Cris start it off because unfortunately Chris's calendar got double booked. So she has to hop off in about a half an hour, but this is one of her favorite topics. So she's like, I'm staying as long as possible. So Cris, I'll let you do the first chunk until you have to hop off.
Awesome. Well, absolutely excited. So excited. You have no idea how excited. I think by the number of excited, you're probably gauging it right now, right? The reason why is because, one, I have an autoimmune. Katie has an autoimmune. So we come with obviously this huge underlying trigger that always that can happen in our body, and where we're supposed to eat foods and whole foods, unfortunately that histamine, depending on if you have a autoimmune or you have leaky gut, whatever it is, foods can start working against you. Well, then that's what people don't understand. It's like, but Cris, I'm eating real foods. Like I took out my Twinkie and I put in this what's one of mine? Oh, I find that's not even, but anyways, and I put in this, or I ate like an apple, and guess what happened? I got a rash, and I'm like, welcome. And I usually say it like that too. I'm like, welcome, I've been waiting for you, right? Because it's not like we go and we can overly test for histamine in Canada. It's not like a big testing market for it, right? So if you just want to quickly walk us through that histamine concept, I mean, I know for us, we'll talk today about the skin, like flushing, sweating, edema, things that our acne sufferers get. But from perspective of food, how do we isolate what's good for us, what's bad for us when it's whole food? Everything's supposed to be from the earth and good for us. Until when, right?
Yes, yeah, that is such an excellent question. And, you know, to put this into context, like I will have clients who are coming to me and they'll say, Tracey, I can eat 5 foods.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is all I can eat without having some kind of reaction to food. So this can go to this extreme. And in many people, it doesn't go there. But when we talk about whole food and, you know, especially in the world of nutrition, there's 2 foods that I particularly want to draw your attention to, because how many of us have read and been told, like it's everywhere, that we need to be having fermented foods and bone broth, right? You need to repair leaky gut because it's at the root of everything. And the foods to do that are fermented foods and bone broth. But guess what? They're super high in histamine. And both Luca and I have stories. That was how we figured out that histamine was playing a role in our health. And so for me, I'd finished my studies. I then went and became a GAPS certified protocol. So GAPS is a protocol specifically designed to heal and repair the gut. So here I was, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do all of this. I'm going to make my own yogurt and sauerkraut. And I was making kvass and like all this stuff, like fermenting every vegetable you can imagine. And it took me forever to figure out that that's what was triggering my symptoms. And I was actually developing new symptoms. So it wasn't just that my existing symptoms were getting worse. I actually developed new symptoms. And by far the worst one was urinary urgency. Mm-hmm. And it was so bad, I was peeing my pants. Now, when it started, you can bet I didn't tell anybody because, you know, I was in my mid-40s. I was like, what is going on? Way too embarrassed to tell anybody that I was actually like, I couldn't get to the toilet in time. I'd be trying to get my pants undone and the urine would start trickling before I could get my butt on that toilet seat. And, you know, I had been doing Pilates like literally for decades at that point. And I was like, you know what? I know I have a really strong pelvic floor. This is not incontinence that is happening. And nobody was really talking about histamine. I mean, it was like way off in this really obscure world. So it was out there, but I really had to go digging deep. And it took me about a year of like, I'm eating these fermented foods. And some days I really have to urinate really like so powerfully that I could not hold it in. And, you know, eventually I sort of came across histamine. I was like, oh, I wonder if this is part of what's going on. And, you know, like I said, it was such a long process. And the reason it took so long, because it wasn't like, oh, I've just eaten a fermented food and now I have to pee. Like it wasn't that immediate response, right? So when it's not clear cut like that, you're just like, what's going on? And Luca has a very similar story. I know she won't mind me sharing, but she had done this like incredible bone broth, right? Like, I'm going to let these bones simmer for 48 hours. And she made this beautiful soup for she and her daughter. And then she took her daughter to dance class. She had explosive diarrhea to the point where she lost consciousness, had one more huge bowel evacuation, like destroyed the carpet in that dance studio. They had to recarpet afterwards, went to the hospital, and they were like, we can't find anything wrong with you.
You're fine. You can go home. Your blood works normal.
Yeah. Yeah. Like basically that was it, right? They said you're low in electrolytes. And she's like, yeah, I think I just left those all on the floor.
The poor
Right.
woman.
That's
Oh
So
so
my
true.
goodness. Yeah.
People don't equate bowels to electrolyte hydration at all. You've nailed it there for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really incredible, right? Is histamine and even mast cell activation syndrome, because those are two things that you both discuss, is
Yes.
they can be a silent, I don't want to say silent killer, but like a really silent culprit for a lot of issues and symptoms and disorders people are having that, you like you said, go undetected for years and years. Things like, of course, skin, here, like we see this time in and time out, Cris, is acne. You already mentioned the digestive system. Maybe there's menstrual pain, maybe nerve pain. So I
yeah.
myself, I've dealt with severe chronic low back and nerve pain for 20 years of my life. And part of my own protocol for my chronic pain and nerve pain was doing a histamine protocol, because I was having such a reaction to so many healthy foods because of how they were implicating the histamine. So Tracey, I would love if you could just explain a little bit of how these histamines are like histamine intolerances are happening in the body.
Yeah. So the word intolerance, I feel, is not really an accurate term to be using. Basically, what's happening, so we have a few ways that histamine gets into our body. So we make it because we need it. It is super important. It's a neurotransmitter, right? So it's involved in our brain function. It is involved in wound repair. It it helps with smooth muscle contraction. So we need smooth muscle contraction to move our food through our digestive tract, to be able to pee, right? We need our bladder to contract to be able to pee. We need smooth muscle contraction, right? That's how babies are expelled into the world.
We want to
through,
expel the baby. Being pregnant myself, we want the baby to come out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So we need histamine. It's really, really important. And we make it for that reason. We can also get it, as we've been discussing, through the food we eat, right? So it can come into our body through the food we eat. And then it also gets made by microbes. And so we have this beautiful gut microbiome that does so much for our bodies. But if you happen to have a gut microbiome that has species that are making histamine, then you could have an abundance of histamine coming in that way. So there's these sort of three pathways that we get histamine, right? We make it, it comes in through our food, and it can be made by our microbes. So the term histamine intolerance is really a histamine clearance issue.
Mm-hmm.
So once we have used histamine, we need to be able to break it down and metabolize it, get it out of our system. And so we do that primarily in two places. We do that in the gut. So there's an enzyme in the gut called DAO, diamine oxidase, breaks down histamine there. So if you've got enough DAO, hopefully it can deal with the histamine that's made by your microbes and the histamine from your food. But not everybody makes enough of that enzyme. So that could be for genetic reasons, or that could be because you've got leaky gut and you just can't make it because your gut's not healthy. Then we have another enzyme called HNMT. It's histamine and methyltransferase, and it breaks down histamine in the liver. And so when you've got histamine circulating in your bloodstream, it's going to get pumped through the liver, and the histamine will get broken down there. So again, genetically, you may just not have a lot of that enzyme to be able to break down histamine there. Or you may have other reasons why that enzyme's not able to function optimally. So, toxicity could be a thing. And so it's really just like Luca and I often sort of talk about having a scale, right? Like how much histamine's coming into your body, whether it's through you making it or food or, from your gut microbiome. And then how well are you able to clear it? We call it the high hope principle. Histamine in has to equal histamine out for you not to have symptoms. But if you've got more histamine in your system than you can move out, then you will have symptoms, like acne or itchy skin or eczema, right? All of these skin issues. So that's kind of the histamine, what we call histamine intolerance piece. There's another more complex side to histamine intolerance. This is where I think of histamine sensitivity as, again, not so much an intolerance, but a histamine sensitivity. And this is where your mast cells, and I know we haven't really talked about mast cells yet, but these are an immune cell, and these are cells that store histamine and can release it. And so, if you have a true allergy, right, you're allergic to dogs, you go pet a dog and, you get hives or runny, itchy nose, whatever, that's because those mast cells have released histamine. But some people, those mast cells are really sensitized. And so, and this is me, right? I have a diagnosis of something called mast cell activation syndrome. So my mast cells are really sensitive to histamine. So when I eat histamine from food, my mast cells go and dump even more histamine. They release all this histamine, and not just histamine, but these mast cells house over 1,200 different chemicals, and many of those are inflammatory. And this is where, like, doctors are currently not educated in this area, which is very, very frustrating in the world. And this is why people aren't getting this diagnosis, or it's taking decades to get it. But when the mast cells release, like, they could release any number of these 1,200 chemicals, resulting in a very, very broad range of symptoms. And every single person with mast cell activation will have a different symptom profile. And so that's where, like, this sensitivity to histamine comes into play and can make people incredibly, like, complex in what they're struggling with, from a health perspective. And often when I see clients, they will literally have a list of diagnoses. Like, I think the biggest I've seen is 18 different medical diagnoses. Wow. And, I just say, okay, like, I can't diagnose you, but let's just assume histamine is an issue here you.
We can read between the lines. Maybe, could be.
Yeah. Like, it's not going to hurt to try. So let's give this a try. Let's see if we can use diet and then do some things to stabilize your mast cells. And it's profound. It's amazing the shift people start to see.
And Cris, like, dealing with our clients, because we've worked with well over 1,000 women in the Clear Skin Solution all over the world. And Cris, what would you say would be some of those classic symptoms that you're like, yep, we might have some histamine going on when it comes to those acne sufferers?
Right off the bat. Well, now I feel nervous because I have an expert here.
But it's a pop quiz, everybody. Pop quiz.
Wow, how the tables turn today. Okay, yep. In all honesty, it's what I see most with the acne is any time in the medical history where they have chronic respiratory issues and they've had asthma or what they call exercise-induced asthma. So it's not really there, but it's there. And I outgrew my asthma. What? Huh? You outgrew your latex allergy, you outgrew your asthma? Like, these things to me, like, ding, 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 right? So when I'm looking at chronic respiratory issues from little wee right up, or they've had it over a couple years and they can't shake it, I'm going into histamine right off the bat. Some minor things is if I know they're estrogen dominant. Hello, histamine. They're like, what? Where's if they have the eczema or the proliferation of the skin, so the C-amp or the CGMT, so it's how the skin comes out. It kind of like overproduces and goes back in. I'm looking for that. I'm like, oh, hello. Low stomach acid, right? We all know that. We all know because we're all experts now. We all know that histamine really it binds to a special cell in the stomach, and then stomach acid is produced until. Right. So these are the small things I look, if digestion is off, if we have that respiratory, definitely the skin, if there may be estrogen, if they have any kind of bowel inconsistency because of that smooth muscle contraction. So are we holding in our poop? Are we having unicorn poops? Are we not? Like, I want unicorn poops. I don't know, Tracey, do you like unicorn poops? I like unicorn poops. Right. Right. So it's just these right here are the big ones. And just as a sidebar is because I know that with bone marrow and the red blood cells. This gives oxygen, has to shunt to the brain. And that's in the process of the kidneys. And acne is with the kidneys. So as soon as I look at that, I'm looking at that dysregulation. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm pretty sure I haven't even taken the stem off the cherry here, Tracey. So like, you go for it.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, definitely respiratory stuff. So when we think of, again, mast cells, these cells that have the ability to release histamine, mast cells are everywhere in the body, which is why you can have symptoms anywhere in the body. Mm-hmm. And they particularly are abundant in the skin, right? So that's why we have skin issues. They're very abundant in the respiratory tract, as you have just discussed, right? Asthma, and especially like exercise-induced, cold-induced asthma. And they're very abundant in the GI tract. So, you know, any kind of GI issues. And just to clarify on what you said, histamine does trigger the production of stomach acid. And so sometimes people have terrible heartburn, have terrible reflux. And I've seen people where their teeth even become damaged because it is so extreme.
Yeah, same.
And we have also, so our bladder is another. So I think of all of these as barrier tissues, right? These are tissues that protect us from different parts of our environment. Our bladder is another place. So people will have, well, you know, I shared I had urinary urgency, but we see things like interstitial cystitis where people are having a lot of pelvic pain. And in men, it's, what is it? Chronic. I'm not going to remember. There's
so many.
It's interstitial cystitis, and men, there's like another health condition that is related to mast cells. And Katie, you shared something about nerve pain. Mast cells like to hang out with neurons. So mast cells, when they're born, so they are made in bone marrow, and then they're still immature, and they go out, they travel to this different tissue to mature. But they kind of like to go and hang out with neurons. So there's also a lot around the nerves. So that would be things like neuropathy, right? Nerve pain, nerve tingling, like weird sensations in your skin. So itchiness is actually histamine talking to your nerves. And then if you get higher histamine, that starts to transition into pain. So itchiness and pain actually are like the same, it's the same thing, just different levels of severity. And so, you know, those are, again, some of the things we see. So pain is a big one, like pain for sure. People, especially if they have pain in more than one part of their body. So, you know, we've already touched on back pain, jaw pain, chest pain. So I had one client who was like, I've been having these myocardial events. And then we started doing a low histamine mast cell stabilizing approach. And he's like, I haven't had any more.
Incredible.
And there's so many mast cells in the heart as well. And so period pain, like for women, period pain.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And Cris, you touched on that estrogen dominance. So estrogen tells the mast cells to release more histamine. And then progesterone says, whoa, put the brakes on, stop the histamine release. So if you have more estrogen relative to progesterone, you're getting the, hey, come on, like bring it on, release the histamine, but you're not getting that sign to stop releasing it. So that estrogen dominance very, very much connected to sort of this mast cell release of histamine. I don't know, like I could just go on.
It's incredible, right? How many things in the body can be attributed to histamine.
Yes. But I do want to bring your attention to, from a mast cell perspective, like a defining characteristic, and that is sensitivities. And this could be a sensitivity to anything. It could be, you know, I'm in the grocery store and I avoid that laundry aisle because all those perfumes in the laundry aisle, I don't feel so great with those. Yeah, it could be I'm sensitive to weather change, right? You're that person that gets a headache or a migraine when the weather changes. And that's your mast cells saying, oh, you know what? I don't know if that atmospheric, like I'm feeling that pressure change. I'm not sure that's really a safe thing for you, so I'm going to release histamine and these other mediators. It could be sensitivity to light. It could be sensitivity to textures, right? Like, oh, I can't wear this shirt. Like, it's bugging me. Any kind of sensitivity. Like for me, it was herbals, right? I'd go to my naturopathic doctor and he'd be like, oh yeah, take this herbal formulation, and things would go sideways. And so if people are like, even emotionally, right? If you're that empath and you find you're very sensitive to other people's emotional states, that could also be a sign of mast cell sensitivity.
Mm-hmm. There's so many things. So I would love Tracey to talk about, a couple more things. Could we look at really the role of histamine and mast cells in acne? And then I would love to dig a little bit more into like, how do we know if we are actually dealing with mast cell or histamine?
Right. Yeah. So with acne, so cells, if you think of a cell as a ball, a little beach ball.
It's a great image. Beach ball. We got
a beach ball. And I always like to visualize my Pilates ball.
I am a religious Pilates goer, so I will also imagine the Pilates ball.
I'm on the beach, so you guys carry on.
Great. Okay, whatever ball you have, imagine on the outside of this ball are some locks, just like a door lock, right? Different locks. And if you were to take a key and put it into one of these locks, the ball might release some air. And the air is going to be different depending on what key you're using, what lock you're trying to open. So when we're talking about acne, we have to understand that our skin cells, so these are the balls, they have locks on them. They have these different receptors. And so histamine's the key, right? It's going to bind to a receptor. So it's going to unlock the something in this cell. And when histamine binds to receptors on skin cells, one of the things that it can trigger, like a cascade, is to eventually release more sebum. Mm-hmm. Right. So for people who are getting, that's just really oily, that is where histamine can play a role for sure. And then, I've mentioned mast cells release many, many other chemical mediators as well. So for people who are struggling with scar tissue, right, they're getting scarring from their acne, that's where you definitely want to think there's mast cell involvement. So there's a lot of fibrotic chemical mediators that get released that contribute to that scar tissue. So I think those are sort of the two primary mechanisms that I'm aware of that contribute to acne.
Because Cris, we've seen some borderline miracles happen where we've had clients with severe chronic acne and we put them on a histamine protocol, and Cris, what happens?
Yeah, skin drastically changes. Most often because histamine is an elimination type diet, we'll say it if we're going to do it through the meals. A lot of people when they first come in is their stress load or their compounded stress load, whatever that may be, is in overdrive. So that inflammatory reaction is excessive. So we take a nice amount of time to lower that. Sometimes we can't even get to the histamine, right? Like it's just more of a, I got to calm everything down because histamine, it's a big factor, but it's not the big dog right now. We look at that, but however, we've had people go through things and go through protocols, and some protocols can exasperate because it is more histamine based. And as soon as I see that, I'm like, hello. Again, I talk to it. I get so excited. I'm like, hello.
She does talk to the histamine.
I do. I talk when
I'm Cris.
Because when I touch a client's file, I also make side notes for myself or for other coaches. Watch this. One of the big ones, Tracey, is I like to do traditional Chinese medicine with the face. And you know where histamine loves to hang out, and you know this? The eyes. Histamine loves to hang out in the eyes, the glaze, the disheveled blood vessels. I'm not even talking the underneath because everybody goes there. We're above that. We're looking for this internal. I love that pink little hue where someone looks like they took pink eyeliner above and below the eyelids. And I'm like, welcome, you're back. So these are the things I like to validate. And people say, well, is there science to prove it? Well, yeah, I'm sure there is, but we also don't need it because we're using those files. We're using your responses. I'm like, look at your history here, 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 here. One lady, she was talking about, we couldn't go with estrogen, right? There's like, nutritionist, we don't diagnose in anything.
Yeah.
But I suspected some histamine interconnections, but I knew estrogen was higher based on the way she was breaking out. She was breaking out in the follicular phase. And then she would get these little things called menstrual migraines.
Yes.
Right? So then estrogen levels peak during that menstrual phase, stimulating a rise in histamine. So we don't need to sometimes have the test, but when you get really good at looking beyond just the signs and the symptoms, and you're like, let me put it as my puzzle piece and put it over here, eventually you're going to get the tree. You're going to get the sun. You're going to get my little Bruno, if that's going to be a puzzle, because that's going to be
that's
my
her dog,
puzzle.
by the way.
Yeah, it's Bruno. Yeah. But that's what I just wanted to say. So that's how I look at it. I'm never about this one kind of thing, right? So histamine, just for everybody that's like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the histamine and I'm going to do this book, sweet mother of goodness. What I do want to talk about afterwards is the histamine release when we start to transition, because the endotoxins as well, but that's just after. Please work with a professional. Would you not agree, Tracey? I mean, not just because you do it, but histamine's not one of those ones we want to like really mess around with.
No. So yeah, there's, especially if we're starting to suspect mast cell activation, there are so many triggers that can be at the root. So Luca and I, we called our book, and I mean, everything, our website, everything is Histamine Haven. Mm-hmm. And we called it Haven because there is something that has made the body not feel safe. And so we're trying to create a safe space for people. And when we start to explore that and we start to look at what has made your mast cells not feel safe, or it could be what has made your nervous system not feel safe, because I think I mentioned mast cells like to hang out next to the nerves. And because it's in the research literature, it's called crosstalk. They're talking back and forth all the time. So it doesn't matter if it started with the mast cells or if it started with the nervous system. Wherever your body has gotten a message that it's not safe, your mast cells are doing their job. Their job is to protect you. And so if the body doesn't feel safe, the mast cells are just doing their job and they're trying to protect you. But it can result in this whole myriad collection of symptoms. So we have to start to figure out, what is it that has made your body not feel safe? And in my clinical practice, a lot of what I actually do is help people navigate their other practitioners. Right? So in the medical system, this is what you need to be asking for, talking about, conversations to have with your doctor. If you have, a naturopathic, alternative, functional, whatever practitioner you're working with, I'm often just facilitating those conversations, because in that realm, sometimes it is necessary to get some testing done, because Katie, you talked about Epstein-Barr, right? Like, there's so many, there's infections, there's trauma is like such a huge one. Whether that's in your lifetime or your ancestors' lifetime, and that's been passed down epigenetically, right? There's so much to explore. And I can create safety in the body with food, but then I have to help people explore all of these other areas to figure out, why are your mast cells not feeling safe? And I'll tell you, one of the most, aside from trauma is a pretty big one for sure, but mold exposure is just so debilitating. And it's something that I see so much of.
It's like massive acne.
Massive acne. Right, the mold. it infiltrates so easily, right? It's like my husband knows I am paranoid of mold, anything mold related. Like I'm like, oh my God, no, because I know how detrimental it can be on our body.
Yeah. And so this was years ago. In my 20s, I lived in Korea. And Korea is a really hot, humid country. And like we had visible mold, like it was coming through the walls. And back then, I didn't know anything about mast cells. I didn't know anything about mold, right? Those were not conversations that were being had back then. I'm dating myself a little bit there.
That's okay. I wasn't having those conversations either in my 20s.
Yeah, I was so sick, right? I was struggling with debilitating fatigue, with chronic nausea. I had eczema all over my body, like this bullseye, these red circles all over my body. And, nobody, and I was vegetarian at the time, which I think compounded everything. And I'm living in Korea where you eat kimchi
every day,
every single meal, right? So here I am eating like these fermented foods all the time. And it was brutal. And like I'd go to the doctors, they kept saying, "Are you sure you're not pregnant?" Yes, I'm sure
positive.
I'm not pregnant. Yeah. And then they sent me to like a GI specialist, right? And they gave me all these heartburn medications. And I was like, I don't have heartburn. And it just made everything worse. So, and that like sharing our stories is so important, I think, because hopefully people can see themselves in there. But the problem with, these mast cell and histamine issues is the utter, like the medical gaslighting, where people are going into their doctors and they're, the doctor, and because often these people are really sick, right? So the doctor might do a full blood work panel and everything comes back normal.
You're fine. You're healthy.
Yeah, exactly. The doctor's like, you're fine. It's all in your head. And so you're experiencing all of this and it's true because you can feel it. It's all happening in your body and you're being told that what you are perceiving is not happening. And it's like Luca and I talk about this often, the people that we see, they persevere. They just keep seeking answers because they know
they're not crazy.
What they are experiencing. They know what they are feeling. They know something is wrong. And they know that there's an answer out there for them somewhere.
And bless them, because I am one of those people where you have to be resilient, because it's so easy to just accept, like, I guess I'm crazy. I'm going to have to take these 18 different medications. But if you feel that something is wrong in your body and you don't feel well, really empower yourself and keep going and stay committed, because you deserve to feel good. You deserve to thrive and not just survive. So Tracey, I would love to know and I'm sure everybody listening, how can you know if you have histamine or if you have a mast cell problem?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are biomarkers, definitely, like there's a lot of them. So from, a purely histamine perspective, there's urine tests you can do, there's blood work you can do, but the samples have to be frozen. Histamine degrades really, really rapidly. Now, again, is your doctor going to know about these tests? Probably not. You can't send people to lab services, right, for this. Like, I mean, again, you can, but you have to know, and you have to know also that they need to be frozen, right? So there's a lot of obstacles with the testing. There's private lab testing. Again, you would have to go through a naturopathic or a functional medicine doctor. And, typically then you're going to be actually seeking a practitioner out who has experience with histamine or mast cell issues, because again, otherwise they're not really going to know about the testing. So, and the testing's expensive. Like these private lab tests are very, very costly. So like the easiest thing to do is start with the dietary approach and see if it makes a difference.
Because it's not going to hurt.
no, it's not going to hurt. And that's a very clear sign then that, and you won't know if it's histamine intolerance or mast cell activation necessarily. But so the protocol that Luca and I developed, and I mean, you'll be familiar with all of this terminology, but right, it's low histamine, it's gut healthy, it's nutrient dense, it's mast cell stabilizing, right? We've built everything that needed to go, right? It supports histamine clearance, right? We've done everything to put it into kind of this one protocol. And so, yeah, we just say like to people, just try it. And if it works, then you're going to know. Your body is going to tell you, right? All of those symptoms is your body calling out, hello, something's wrong. Come and figure out what it is.
Absolutely. It's like, if you're starting to feel better, clearly there's something working. And I remember yes. when I was doing my histamine protocol, I was having an improvement in my symptoms. So I knew that this was working. And Cris, I know you felt the same.
Yeah, I love it. Like, now, is it sustainable all the time for me? Not so much, because, I want to go to a restaurant, but I know the risk associated, and I know the things I'm going to do to, kind of that precursor, right? What I do see is when people have histamine, and Tracey, you're probably way more experienced in this than myself, is they'll go and take a histamine buster supplement, or they'll go take DAO, or they'll take histamina, and they're like, oh no, look, it's okay, I know how to mitigate it, but we didn't take care of the issue. So where I love the aids, I'm not big with supplementing unless it's one of those ones to try and get that circulation going, try to get the body talking back and forth, try to get digestion stimulated first. Fair?
Yeah. So that's a good one to speak to. So again, if people have histamine intolerance and it's just I'm not breaking down histamine well. If it's genetic in nature, having a DAO supplement is great, right? Because you may never be able to bump up your DAO naturally. Obviously, we want to do all the gut repair stuff to support production of DAO, but it's possible that we can just never really get your DAO levels up. So, eating a low histamine diet, doing everything you need to support DAO production, making sure you have all the nutrients to do that. Really, really good approach. I'm going to share with you. So because I have mast cell activation syndrome, and I'm still exploring what all of my triggers are, right? It's a journey. This takes time. It's not a fast process.
Nope.
So when I finished nutrition school, right, I'm like, I'm going to do everything natural, right? Like,
yay.
But to manage,
as we all do.
For me to have symptom management, I do the dietary protocol. And for me, compliance is huge, right? Like, if I cheat, I am going to have symptoms. It's just that simple. I do all the supplementation. I do the DAO. I do mast cell I do a whole bunch of mast cell stabilizers. So that is also really, really important. If I veer from that, I will have symptoms. And I am on pharmaceuticals. I take H1 blockers, H2 blockers, and a mast cell stabilizer.
So we should just tell people that there's 4 H's, the histamine 1, but basically. And so you're going over 1 and 2, but there's a series of 4, and you're taking pharmaceuticals in order to ensure that those don't break down. They don't become catabolic to the body.
No, it's actually the receptors. So we have 4 types of receptors. There's only one kind of histamine, but we have 4 types of receptors.
She meant receptors. I was going to cut in.
Sometimes I just live in my own head.
So the pharmaceuticals are blocking those receptors, and currently there are no commercially available H3 and H4 blockers. For some people, they will be profoundly impactful, like for those with neurodegenerative conditions. So hopefully some of those will become available. So, and I actually have done a full 360 in my thinking around pharmaceuticals. I mean, one, obviously they've profoundly impacted my health. I have, 100% symptom management when I do all of these things.
Incredible.
And I'll take you through a little cycle that I talk to my clients about. So I start with the brain. So we've got this limbic system that is designed to perceive danger and, feel fear, whatever, right? It's the part of the brain that, again, like our brain is also designed to protect us. It's to ensure our survival. So the brain perceives something as dangerous, whether it is actually dangerous or not. It's just that perception that has to happen. So then your brain has this message saying, this is not safe. It communicates that through the nervous system, right? So then people can have, what we call nervous system dysregulation. And then those nerves, again, like to hang out with the mast cells. Mm-hmm. They're always together. So they communicate that to the mast cells. Then the mast cells release all of these chemical mediators, including histamine. And then you have symptoms. And then you've got all of these symptoms, and the brain, like now we're coming full circle in this, and the brain says, what is going on? Like all of this stuff is not safe. So the brain continues to get the message that it's not safe, and it becomes this really, really vicious cycle. So we know that we can come in to the brain piece and do some brain retraining. We know we can come in at the nervous system place and do, some, vagal tone stuff, right? All of like meditation, all of this stuff that's going to calm the nervous system. We know that we have diets and supplement that we can come in to tell the mast cells, like you're safe, you're stable. But from a symptom perspective, if your brain keeps getting the message from the symptoms that it's not safe, like what do we do to manage symptoms? And my whole life, literally until a year ago, I was like, no, don't do, like if you can avoid pharmaceuticals, do. But now I see them as this really, really valuable tool to come in and break this cycle in another place, because the more places we can come in and break this cycle, the more chances you will have of long-term recovery. And, and to put this into context, like the people that I see in my clinical practice are so sick, right? Long-term disability, they cannot engage in life. Some people can barely get out of bed. And so, to say to somebody who can't get out of bed, like go into your kitchen and start preparing food, it's not going to happen.
No.
Or, to say you need to start moving. Well, they can't move because they're in so much pain, right? So we have to recognize that we have tools from a vast, vast array of different types of practitioners, and let's use the best of everything that we have to help people get well. And, this, we can't work with pharmaceuticals. We can't recommend them.
Nope.
So I've made up a handout and I'm like, take this to your doctor and have a conversation with your doctor.
Take it.
Right?
Yeah. But I love that you shared that, Tracey, because I really do think the future of our healthcare system is a combination of both of these worlds, because for so long we've had these two opposing worlds, the traditional conventional medical system and like the more holistic approach. And there's almost been like this little battle between the two when there shouldn't be, because there's a time and a place for everything. And if we could actually come together and offer our clients or our patients or just society this really synergistic, holistic approach with the combination of Western and holistic, this can give such profound relief and help people improve.
Yes. Yeah. And like when you said we've got two camps, right?
Yeah,
They're very
camps.
Judgmental.
Very judgy.
Very judgmental
Very judgy.
of one another.
And it's so true. So I would love for you, after all of the things you've shared, what would be 3 really like nutritional food tips that people could start with? They're like, oh my gosh, Tracey, everything you're saying, like both hands up.
Do not say coffee, Tracey. Do not say coffee. I'm not discussing coffee.
Or matcha. Please don't say matcha.
Yeah. We're not receptive to those words.
So I don't like to talk about elimination. I like to talk about abundance and
Love
what we
it.
can bring
Let's
in.
do it.
So
Let's
that's what we're going to
abundance it
focus
up.
on. Let's abundance it up. So we've talked about DAO, this enzyme that helps to break down histamine, and it is abundantly found in pea shoots.
Love pea
So
shoots.
bring in those pea shoots, right? And so, go to your farmer's market, your health food store, get those pea shoots, just chop them up, add them to salads. If you're having a bowl of soup, once you've served that soup, sprinkle them in there, add them to your soup or stew or whatever it might be. Think of it kind of like you would parsley, right? Just chop it up, season everything.
And I love pea shoots. I even find them at the grocery store, like here's at Sobeys, a regular old grocery store. You'll see it in the green section.
Yeah, so certainly they have become very popular just in the last few years, which is great. So pea shoots are great to add in. And then we need a bioflavonoid called quercetin. So quercetin has been incredibly well researched, and it is mast cell stabilizing. And so the interesting thing now with quercetin is you've got high histamine sources of quercetin and low histamine sources. So we want to focus on the low histamine sources of quercetin. So blueberries are a great example. And it doesn't matter if they're frozen or fresh, right? So get some blueberries. And then I have kind of 3 favorite foods from the quercetin category that I feel they're inexpensive. You can get them year round and you can get them in any grocery store. So these would be my top 3 picks. Apples.
Love it.
Right? Who doesn't eat apples, right?
Easy.
Throw it into a lunch bag, grab it as you're heading out the door. So apples are a great source of quercetin. Cabbage. Cabbage is another one. So green cabbage, red cabbage, it doesn't Napa cabbage, right? They're all going to be great in quercetin. So do a slaw, cook it up. I love to chop it up and throw it in my Instant Pot, set it for 3 minutes.
Yum.
And it's lovely. It's beautiful, right? Salted. I put some healthy fat in there. So cabbage is a great one. And onions. Very rich in quercetin, right? So think all the different types of onions, red onions, white onions, yellow onions. Onions are also a great source of quercetin. And of course, they add so much flavor to meals. So those would be sort of my top picks for quercetin. Asparagus is another great one. But of course, it's kind of more of a seasonal one. So we've got the DAO, we've got the quercetin, and then vitamin C. Vitamin C is antihistaminic, and it is also mast cell stabilizing. Now, just like quercetin, vitamin C, you want low histamine options. So let me put a picture on vitamin C, because what's the first food that people think of with vitamin C?
Oranges, citrus. But what's wrong with that, Tracey? What's wrong with the citrus?
So all of the citrus is high in histamine, and some of the citrus bioflavonoids can be mast cell triggers. So you don't want to do citrus. Other ones that I'm just going to draw to people's attention, strawberries, right? People think strawberries, great. Those are problematic from a histamine perspective. Pineapple would be another one that can be quite problematic. So let's focus in on the best sources of vitamin C if you suspect histamine issues. Blackberries. So berries are always they're just so rich in all kinds of compounds. Vitamin C is just one of them. So blackberries is good. Cherries would be another really lovely berry, and cranberries. So Luke and I love to joke about how cranberries are so underutilized. Don't just eat them at Thanksgiving.
They are underutilized. They are.
Yeah.
They're not just a Thanksgiving food.
No. So we love to do sheet pan meals, both of us, where we just throw some cranberries on there because it gives it this beautiful pop of color. So cranberries is another one. And then broccoli is great. And cabbage, again, is really, really good for vitamin C. So cabbage is nice because it's in both categories. Asparagus is another one that falls into both categories. So when it's asparagus season, load up, baby, load up.
And I love that all of the foods you mentioned are accessible, easy to find. They're not these obscure superfoods you have to scour the earth for. They're common everyday foods that we eat.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Cris, is there anything that you wanted to ask? Because I know I said I'd let you talk and then I took over by accident.
Oh,
But
Tracey, I'm so
Cris,
used to it by now.
Cris, I did notice you were able to push your next meeting so you could stay on. See, Tracey, this is how
I
excited
know.
she was.
I just found this out, Tracey. I don't know what happened to my schedule. I was so disheveled. I'm like, I have to make this work. So I love this topic because what's nice about the topic is we have the ability to now help ourselves, to help our clients. And I mean, everybody listening is like, I have mast cell, I have histamine, I know they are, because that's what they do. And you may have, but you can also have a very small amount, a little bit, right? What I want, my little take home here, and Tracey, I'd just like you to, jump in or correct it, validate it, either way, is one thing about histamine is, especially with acne sufferers, is we have higher anxiety-like behaviors. So go ahead. Oh, look, she's
ready.
She's on. Okay. You just go.
Histamine acts as a neurotransmitter.
Yes.
And can contribute to anxiety. And like both Luca and I were always like, why is nobody talking about the histamine and anxiety connection, right? There's so many, anxiety is talked about in so many ways, but we're like, nobody's talking about the histamine.
That's a big
piece.
one.
Well, Cris is your new best friend.
I am. How do you feel about pen paling, Tracey? How do you feel about it? Well, actually, you know what? I want to be a little bit bold here and say, because that's a topic all on its own.
That's a whole nother podcast.
It's massive. Tracey, I would absolutely love for you to come back, and I would love us to tackle the histamine and anxiety if you're open to it, because about that blood-brain barrier and about the research that doesn't support it, but yet there's things that can go through the blood-brain barrier, and that's called nutrients that you talked about. It's called, how estrogen can pass the blood-brain barrier, and that's why we get the mooding, the PMS, and the anxiety, and the acne. So because hormones are so correlated into that anxiety and the histamine, man, oh man, if we don't hit that in a podcast, Tracey, what are we doing, right?
Absolutely. Well, Tracey, you've been such a wealth of information. Is there any parting tips or advice or things that you wanted to share before we finish up?
I think I just would have to say to people, like, trust what you're feeling in your body. Know that your body is not working against you, that it's trying to communicate with you. And we have never, ever been taught how to listen to our bodies. If anything, like, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. So when I was growing up, it was like, finish what's on your plate.
Yep.
So we're getting the message from a very young age, whether it's finish what's on your plate or, whatever the message might be. But in that moment, I was getting the message, like, ignore your signals of satiety and keep eating. And, likewise, I'd have a stomach ache and it was like, no, just go to school, right? Like, ignore what's happening in your body. So I just would like to say to people, like, trust that your body knows what it's doing and it's trying to communicate with you. And if you haven't been seeing resolution with the things you've been doing, then just, again, like, intuitively, does this resonate with you? And is this a path that can help you move forward?
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on today, Tracey. I'm so glad, because when I sent you guys a DM on Instagram, I'm like, please say yes, please say yes, please say yes. Please say yes. Because
you put it out there.
I manifested it, because your cookbook, I just want to say again, it was so helpful for me, because when even me as a nutritionist who has a blog, who does this for a living, I was really struggling when I started my histamine protocol, and I didn't find your book until about halfway through it. And I was like, oh, Lord have mercy. This is what I was missing. it saved me because there were so many incredible recipes. Like even just flipping through, the recipes looked incredible, and they're recipes that you would still make in, say, like your everyday if you're not someone that ate this way. So I highly encourage to go and pick up the Histamine Haven by the lovely Tracey Reed and her other half, Lucas Simmons. Sorry, I know I was getting caught up. Lucas Simmons. It's such a wonderful book, and you guys also have a course that's currently coming out as well.
Yeah, so we've been working really hard. So we got the book out, and feedback has been great, which is like exactly what you want when you've put your heart and soul into something. And, you know, Katie, thank you for your feedback as well. But what people are telling us is like, this is the best book on the market. I've read other books. No other book helped me to understand what was going on in my body. So that's been really awesome. But then we were like, you know, some people can pick up a book and use it, but we see so much brain fog in our community. And when people have brain fog, they can't pick up a book and use it. So then we were like, you know, we need a place where people can come, where we can create a space for them and we can hold their hand through all of this. And so we're hoping in the fall.
Oh, that's
to launch.
Exciting.
Timelines are always, you know, dependent on so many factors.
Oh, don't worry. Again, speaking to the choir.
Yeah, we've all done it. Same.
Yeah. So that's our anticipated launch date.
Amazing. So in the meantime, though, I'm going to put it in the show notes. One, go buy Histamine Haven. Make sure you follow both Tracey and Luca on Instagram at Histamine Haven. And please go check out their website. It is such a plethora of resources. You guys even have your histamine food download resource. You have an incredible blog. So go to histaminehaven.com and check it out. And then that way you'll get notified when your course launches. So again, Tracey, thank you so much for coming in. I so appreciate it. I know Cris was ecstatic today. So again, thank you so much.
It was a surprise for me. So it was a great surprise.
Awesome. Yeah, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you today.
Amazing. All right, everybody. See you next week for another episode of the Clear Skin Chronicles.
Thanks for hanging out with us this week on the Clear Skin Chronicles. We'll see you next Wednesday with a brand new episode. Remember to subscribe to the show and drop us a review. Sending glowing vibes your way, Katie and Cris.